Welcome to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. Tonight we begin with a discussion of Aman 21. Aman means peace, the largest multinational maritime exercise hosted by Pakistan Navy in the North Arabian Sea. The exercise will kick off next week, and its mission is to attain regional peace and counter maritime challenges. More than 45 countries, including the world's top navies, will take part in the 7th exercise of the series, which has been held every 2 years since 2007. What makes this year's exercise most significant is that it brings together the 3 largest navies, US, China, and Russia, for collaborative maritime security. The drill allows navies to discuss best practices and establish operational relationships towards the common goal of maritime security. Pakistan Navy is also the only regional navy since 2004 to be part of US-led Coalition Task Force 150 and 151 under the broader umbrella of Coalition Maritime Campaign Plan. PN has also commanded CTF 150 9 times, which is a distinction. We shall also compare the Aman exercises with exercise Malabar, hosted by Indian Navy. Malabar began as a bilateral US-India naval exercise in 1992. Since 2015, Japan has also become a permanent member of the exercise, and the last exercise conducted in November 2020 also included Australia. The exercise now includes the Quad countries and is clearly aimed at countering China. Aman, on the other hand, is an exercise aimed at cooperation, not conflict. But let's get to our panel tonight to discuss the nuances of this naval diplomacy by Pakistan Navy. I'm joined by Vice Admiral Iftikhar Rao, who served as Deputy Chief of Naval Staff Operations and is currently the Managing Director of Karachi Shipyard and Engineering Works. With him, I have Dr. Anjum Sarfraz, a former Commodore of Pakistan Navy, who held various appointments, was the Deputy Commandant of Naval Academy and Director Naval Operations as well as Naval Intelligence. And I also have with me Dr. Asma Shakar Khwaja, who is Associate Professor at the National Defense University in Islamabad. Thank you to all the panelists. Let me begin with Admiral Rao here. Admiral Rao, sir, let's start with the basic issue of Aman 21, the series itself. When the Pakistan Navy began this cooperative exercise, what exactly were the salient features of why this was to be done, and why is this significant?
Actually, as you mentioned, the first thing precursor to this Aman exercise was our joining in 2004 of CMCP, Coalition Maritime Campaign Plan. And that was aimed, of course, to have the peaceful environment in this our region, especially the North Arabian region, North Arabian Sea, because that is what is one of the most important seas from the international traffic point of view, and also that is our major interest of Pakistan, to have peaceful region or peaceful seas in that region. So in 2004, Pakistan Navy joined CMCP, and then within 2 years, by about 2006, we had established our rapport with the international navies. That in 2006, we were offered the first time to command the Task Force 150, which we did. And when this command was given, even Dr. Jeffrey Till mentioned that this is a test case about Pakistan Navy commanding the international task force, which was so successful that, as you mentioned, then we went on to command it 11 times, and then Task Force 151 also 9 times. So in 2006, after our command, then in 2007, as a follow-up, then we had already established our professional rapport with all these navies. So we went on for this Aman exercise. And as you rightly mentioned, then Aman is not aimed against anyone. It is to create a peaceful environment for all this maritime economic activities to go on smoothly in this region of ours. And from 2007, as we all know now, mashallah, it has grown to such strength this time, more than 43 countries. And apart from the ships and other units of the various navies, there is also the SSG groups, the marine groups, and many other activities which go on along with this exercise, and also the social side. That is, and they carry out mutual sports and a lot of other activities. So there's a lot of mixing up, a lot of knowing each other and knowing each other's culture apart from the interoperability at sea. So that is what makes this exercise a very successful and very meaningful thing. Probably this is much better way of doing the diplomacy, and this is what the Navy has been doing so far.
Right, so that's a good opening exposition. Let me get to Dr. Sarfraz here. Dr. Sarfraz, one of the reasons for doing this program, frankly, is that of the three services, Pakistan Navy does not have a very sharp profile, and there's a lot of there are lots of things because it's also a technical service, just like Pakistan Air Force. So not many people understand the waters and how the Pakistan Navy operates. So give me your sense of, as Admiral Rao mentioned, he gave a background of why this is significant. If there's anything else that you want to add to this in terms of the significance of Aman, then we can proceed to make a comparison with Malabar and also talk about other threats, emerging threats in the Indian Ocean region.
I would like to just mention the importance of the Indian Ocean. Pakistan is located. Indian Ocean has the 36 littoral states. It is the third largest ocean in the world, and it has 7, you can call it choke points, from which the oil and other commodities they flow. Out of these, the Strait of Hormuz, on which we are sitting on top of it, Gwadar is located overlooking the Strait of Hormuz. Other choke points like Strait of Malacca, like Bab el Mandab, similarly the Mozambique Channel and Malacca Straits, Sunda Strait, Lombok Straits. Any of these choke points, if they are disturbed, then the flow of oil will be disturbed and the daily user commodities, their prices will go rise. So, but at the same time, nowadays, there are many non-conventional threats prevailing in the oceans. All the international navies should also join in so that the interoperational abilities can be standardized and meet any threat that can be looked into.
Okay, let's get to Dr. Khwaja here. Dr. Khwaja, as I said in my opening, one of the significant things about this particular exercise, Aman 21, is the participation in it of the Russian naval contingent. Now, the last time Russian Navy exercised with other NATO countries was in 2011, which was off the coast of Spain. So give me a sense of how you look at the acceptance by the Russian Navy of being part of this exercise, and what does it say about Pakistan-Russia relations?
Definitely, it is a very quite significant step that Russia is participating in Aman exercise this time. And for me, it is like Russia and other countries involved in this exercise, they are having shared goals about their future. And those shared goals can be Russian intention to expand in terms of diplomatic ties with the other countries, and definitely its desire to work with Pakistan on economic and security issues in future. So definitely, and then Pakistan's opening up towards Russia, that is an evident that Pakistan's diplomacy and foreign policy during last few years, which aims at opening up towards the East, whether it is China or it is Russia or other countries in the East, that is quite successful. And bringing Russia to this exercise is also about the fact that both countries do not perceive each other as a security threat. So threat is not for Pakistan. Threat is not emancipating from Russia, and Pakistan and Russia, there were really several such activities, bilateral activities between Pakistan and Russia during past few years, that they aim that this is the eventual outcome of those diplomatic ties. So this is interesting, and for me it is more interesting that Russia is participating in Aman exercises with the contingents from NATO and US, they are also participating in it. So for me it is like a regional activity which aims at making the Indian Ocean as a secure route for trade and economic sustainability. And when we see that if 45 countries, because practically these are 45 countries which are participating in the physical exercise, but there are 100 other delegations which are participating in the academic exercise, where practitioners and academics on maritime security, they are attending a conference where they will debate, discuss, and would do critical thinking and would try to find out the solution of the common threat perceptions in Indian Ocean. And as you know, various theorists and philosophers of naval studies, they have declared Indian Ocean as the sea of the future. So future politics, geopolitics, geoeconomics, geopolynomics, all that would revolve around Indian Ocean. So for me, if we see the Aman exercise from that perspective, Aman exercise looks like an enabler, an initiative which would enable the involved countries to find solutions for their common problems. And another thing, that it is enabler to forge security through cooperation, because when we use the term security, the synonymous of security appears as a competition. But in contemporary day scenario, in contemporary warfare and strategy, the security can be achieved through cooperation. So we don't need to be in competition, and so that is why. But even for security through cooperation, we need to chalk out common interests, and the countries involved in Aman exercises, the common interest is, as I said earlier, safe and secure Indian Ocean, where the trade can flourish, where other illegal activities can be curbed, which those illegal activities like smuggling and terrorism, terrorist activities and all those things, so they can be curtailed, so that trade can be flourished. And this reminds me that China is developing or materializing the idea of Silk Route through Indian Ocean. So why not? If we definitely sustainable peace and sustainable economy is the common goal of, I think, every sovereign state in the world. And if Indian Ocean can be secured, and we can jointly achieve, by supporting each other, achieve our objective, then this Aman exercise is a very important initiative headed by Pakistan or executed by Pakistan.
Right. So you've put some important issues on the table, and I'm happy that you mentioned that the Aman 21 has two different phases. One is the offshore, academic side of it, the tabletop, and then of course there's the field exercises. So that's an important point. The other important point about achieving security or creating security through cooperation is also very important. However, and this is the point that I want to take to Admiral Rao here. Admiral Rao, here we begin to compare Aman with the Malabar exercise. And as I said, last year's Malabar exercise in November 2020 was 4 navies, all Quad countries, the US, India, Japan, and Australia. And all the analyses with reference to the Malabar exercise talk about this being a naval alliance which does these tactical and strategic operational exercises to counter China. Now, on the one hand, we're trying to create security through cooperation. On the other hand, we also see this emerging scenario of a conflict. So give me your sense of how you view this.
In fact, that is the basic difference. As you rightly mentioned, that Quad is basically, or the Malabar exercises of the Quad, they are basically aimed against China, against any country. Whereas the Aman series of exercises is not aimed against any single country or group of countries. It is cooperation between all. All are welcome in this exercise, in this Aman series, and similarly, the International Maritime Conference, which is being held along with the Aman exercise every time. This is also all inclusive, so it is all inclusive for everybody, so that the common interests at sea are common, like freedom of navigation, safe flow of commerce, counter-terrorism, protection against piracy, protection against smuggling, human trafficking, etc., etc. These are common challenges, and they need common responses, because no single country has the power enough, as the American strategy they say themselves, that no single country has the strength enough to counter all these challenges or to meet all these challenges. So it has to be a cooperation, and without cooperation, this can't be done. Just one example of piracy of Somalia. When this menace came up, so all these navies had to join up. This Task Force 151 was basically aimed at that, and the others also joined in. So that, and when they all joined it, when there was a collaborative effort, so the piracy of Somalia diminished significantly. In fact, it's almost negligible now, and the pirates have shifted elsewhere, the west coast of Africa or whatever. So wherever you have to do it, it has to be a collaborative effort to make this peaceful thing. But on the other hand, Quads and exercises like that, the Quad is, or the Malabar is not the only series of exercises. There are other exercises also like this. But then they are confrontationist in nature, whereas Aman is not. Aman is for all. And in fact, together, as you say, together for peace, and with this International Maritime Conference, which is focusing on blue economy and sustainable development of blue economy in a secure environment. That is the theme, or that is the topic of the International Maritime Conference this time. So economy and security for the sake of, so that this economic activities can go on smoothly. That is the main aim of all this, and which is beneficial to all the regional countries and all the world, not specific to anything. So this is a positive side of thinking, positive thinking exercise, and the conferences, where this Quad is confrontationist in nature, and which is probably will not help anybody. But India, as it is, they always try to benefit or take benefit from such things, because they know the United States and the Western countries, they are wary of China. So they try to take advantage out of that, and that's what they're doing. Indians, right. If we look at them, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Well, I said that if you think of the Indian, understand the Indian thinking, especially on the maritime side, the Panikkar said that India cannot be, Indian Ocean has to be free. And by that, it meant that how it should be free. He said it should be truly Indian. That is the wording he used. And till the end of the Cold War, the Indians always opposed presence of any navy in the Indian Ocean. But after the Cold War, when they realized that the things have changed and they must take advantage of the new scenario, so they started closing up with the Western countries, especially the US, and joined in this maritime things. So in the Indian Maritime Doctrine of 2004, they clearly mentioned their hegemonic designs. They are basically hegemonic country. It is written in their doctrine that control of choke points is very important, because it is very important in bargaining. It is a good bargaining chip in the international politics. So they are undocumented hegemonists, and that is what their aim is. Whereas in Pakistan and this Aman series and this International Maritime Conference, the theme is economic activity, peaceful coexistence, and peaceful environment for all these activities to go on.
Okay, great. So let me pull in Dr. Sarfraz here. Dr. Sarfraz, now there's a bit of irony here because Aman is peace. Now, of course, over the last more than 2 years, India-Pakistan relations have hit a new low, and in the foreseeable future, it doesn't seem that there's much possibility of positive engagement. But give our viewers a sense of whether before this, Pakistan Navy invited the Indian Navy to Aman exercises ever, or it did not? Or if it did the Indian Navy refuse to come? What exactly is the background to this?
Sir, India and Pakistan, these two navies, they have never carried out any exercise together. And the reasons are obvious. We are two countries which have disputes, and because of that, we cannot cooperate or cannot operate at the same medium at one time. But at the same time, we at the international forum, we have invited the navies all over the world. 46 countries will be joining us for the Aman 21. So even if India doesn't join, it does not matter really, because we are thinking of the free navigation in the Indian Ocean, and for that purpose.
No, just a clarification, Dr. Sarfraz, just a clarification. My question simply was whether Pakistan Navy has ever invited Indian Navy. It's not about whether they come or not. I just wanted to find out if that has ever happened in a multinational exercise.
Yes, sir. Even in the multinational, Pakistan has not considered inviting Indian Navy. Okay. And neither Indian have considered inviting Pakistan Navy.
Right. I'm also running out of time, so let's quickly do this round. Dr. Khwaja, give me your sense of why we are stuck in this land warfare mindset and have not really focused on Navy. And I ask this because once you're a nuclear weapons state, even in terms of second strike capability, unless you have the ship-submersible ballistic nuclear platforms, you cannot have credible second strike capabilities. So give me your sense of why you think this is the case.
Yeah, as a student of international security, I would like to highlight that when any country spend or expand or build its forces, that depends upon the preparedness, depends upon the threat perception. So if you see the history of Pakistan since independence, mostly the threat emancipated from the land and from especially our eastern borders with India, and especially those were centric from Kashmir to Lahore. So that is why securing Pakistan through land forces was always our prime objective. Pakistan, as you know, is not a developed country. Pakistan doesn't have abundance of resources to spend on all its forces. So that is why.
No, I must interject, because I think it's not about resources. It's about poor management of resources, and which is why we caught in a certain poor cycle of growth on the economic side. Otherwise, we could have done much better, but go on.
Yeah, so whatever the reason is, so that is why on priority this thing Navy was, but now you have seen that we are modernizing our Navy. The moment Pakistan realized that threat is militarization of Indian Ocean is the biggest threat to the peace of the region, Pakistan is spending and building its naval forces, and this Aman exercise is not the first one happening. It is the 7th exercise exercise.
Yes, we know
Aman
that.
exercise. So it is happening for last 7 years, and Pakistan engaging with the naval forces of the region and the world is an evidence that Pakistan is paying attention and focusing on the
Right.
build-up of navy
Okay.
and naval forces, and that is why we are trying to build the capacity of Pakistan Navy by through putting them in a competition or in an exercise with the international
Right,
other
right.
blue water
I get you. I
navies.
get your point. I'm running out of time now, so very quickly back to Admiral Rao here. Admiral Rao, as Dr. Sarfraz mentioned, we had a threat, not just on land. We had an eastern wing, which was 1,000 miles away, and this was something that should have gotten us to understand how important it was to have a powerful navy. So now give me your sense of, given the emerging threats in the IOR, do we have any plans to invest in the navy, increase not just the platforms, but also, the outreach?
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. Not talking of the 71 or the past, but since about early 2000s, there has been much more cooperation and much more understanding of the naval point of view. At least that is what my feeling is. I happened to be DCNS operations when this defense policy was being made. We were fully participants in this, and our point of view was taken. Then there was the Armed Forces Development Plan. The 3 services plan was developed together, all 3 services. And the meetings used to be chaired by the president and the chairman, and all service chiefs used to attend. And then the prime minister and finance minister all was. And the Armed Forces Development Plan was jointly prepared and approved. Now, how much of that has been implemented? That is a separate story. So as far as the Navy is concerned, naval platforms are, of course, very expensive.
Correct.
So it is not easy to spend so much of money on that. But having said that, we do not want to compete with India on anything, especially platform to platform. It is not possible for us. It is not possible for our economy to do that. Like they have aircraft carriers, then they have plans to have more aircraft carriers, etc. We do not need aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers are basically aggressive weapons. It is meant for taking the aircraft to the area from where your land-based aircraft cannot reach. That is the aim. So we do not have that kind of aims. Our aim is to safeguard our own maritime interests. And for that, this Armed Forces Development Plan, that the plan that we gave and the platform that we gave, they were reasonably approved to our satisfaction at that time. How much of that has been implemented, I can't comment on that because I have retired for quite some time, but there are a lot of these platforms being inducted in the Navy, and I think Navy is being, there's a realization that the naval platforms have to be increased. But Navy's needs are growing, especially with the CPEC.
Yes.
Now, for CPEC on the land, we have already had a big division and now division plus or whatever the forces we have. But for the seaward protection of that, the entire CPEC basically is the importance is Gwadar and the approaches to Gwadar. Not the Gwadar port itself, the approaches to Gwadar. Kulbhushan Yadav said that he had plans to send some boats and create some nuisance south of Gwadar. So that is the kind of threat that region south of Gwadar is very important for us, and we have to have dedicated forces for that. Navy has dedicated already a task force 88 over there, but they need separate platforms in this that can be given to MSA or whatever. But that is the extra need now, apart from the AFDP, which was developed earlier.
Right. Thank you so much. That was Admiral Iftikhar Ahmed Rao. Thank you also to Dr. Anjum Sarfraz and Dr. Asma Shakir Khwaja. We will take a short break and return to discuss the ongoing farmers' protests in India. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus, a quick segment on farmers' protests in India. Last Saturday, thousands of farmers across India blocked roads with makeshift tents, tractors, trucks, and boulders to pressure the government to roll back agricultural reforms. Last month, on India's Republic Day, farmers had defied barricades and had reached Red Fort. The day had seen much chaos in Delhi, India's capital city. The protests have been going on for months now, and attempts to negotiate have failed so far. Let's get to our panelists here, Manpreet Singh, who's head of World Sikh Parliament. Mr. Singh, one of the things that seems to be happening are accusations by the government that these are the Khalistanis backed by Pakistan. Give me your sense of what this is about.
I mean, this sounds nothing new to me. India is always hiding behind some false accusations whenever there is high time for them to commit their mistakes. The whole protest is the result of the three draconian laws that they have passed against the farming industry and trying to capitalize and hand it over to a few corporate giants. And this has got nothing to do with that struggle. However, there is no two ways about it that the Khalistanis have been fighting for their own independent state of Punjab within Indian occupation. But they are trying to mix these two narratives together. But to be honest, the way they are heading and the stubbornness, the sheer ignorance and the sheer insensitivity towards the farmers' issues, I think they will actually combine these two struggles together very soon. Because the people of the Punjab, they are slowly and steadily realizing how India has been financially suppressing them and economically damaging them from years. And this was all earlier highlighted in the Sikh struggle and the Khalistani struggle. So these two narratives, I must say that India will wholly be responsible for combining these two narratives together.
Right. Now, it's interesting that, a number of people, including legislators, as far as in Australia or Canada, elsewhere, have actually said that, the Indian government needs to work this out peacefully. In fact, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights tweeted saying the rights to peaceful assembly and expression should be protected both offline and online, and also said it's crucial to find equitable solutions with due respect to human rights for all. Now, so a number of countries, and people have talked about these farmers' protests, but somehow the Indian government has decided that it has to pull in Pakistan and accuse Pakistan of backing the Khalistanis in order to, in order for the situation to, get aggravated. Why is that? I mean, why should we be pulled into all this?
I mean, I think you're exactly right. To be honest, India is again making a mockery out of itself, to be honest. The world knows that this is a peaceful protest against these laws, and people are just asking for their rights. And it's not only the farmers. The third law actually lifts up any holding restrictions on 100 essential commodities, and the end price will be paid by the whole people of India, not just the farmers only. So the farmers are actually backing up the Indian people as well there. So what I think, if we summarize this whole thing, India is being criticized by international celebrities, is being criticized by ministers and MPs in Canada and Australia, congressmen and senators in America, UK MPs, and now the United Nations. Now, India is trying to hide between, things like Khalistan and Pakistan issue and whatever. But to be honest, I think it's high time that India should realize that its reputation is in grave danger at the minute. What they're doing right now, the world is actually watching it very closely. And I must say this, it was at some point at the start of this demonstration, Punjab versus India, and now it's soon becoming the whole world versus India, where people are backing these peaceful farmers and India is completely ignoring them. And rather than, the Indian media is actually telling to the world that these people are terrorists. And that's got nothing to do with terrorism. If people are protesting for their rights and for their, for their justified rights under any constitution, and India is labeling them as terrorists. I think they need to wake up to the reality. They need to wake up before it's too late, before they get their seat out of the UN or something. You know, something drastic is going to happen if they keep ignoring, common man's plight.
Yeah. Well, before I wrap this, just for a few laughs, Mr. Singh, and this, and I'm actually quoting from reports that have emerged in the Indian media, and the wording is more or less the same. And it says the government has asked social media messaging app Twitter to remove 1178 Pakistani Khalistani. It's a hyphenated term, Pakistani Khalistani accounts spreading misinformation in the backdrop of the farmers' protests. So it seems that, Pakistan and Khalistan are now a hyphenated entity as far as India is concerned.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm not surprised by India doing this. If, the recently leaked chat of Arnab Goswami is actually giving us quite a few insight into the false flag programs of India behind the Pulwama attack and everything. So I don't blame them for doing this because that's their habit. But whatever they say, that won't undermine the struggle of the common people. And I must say, it won't even undermine the struggle of the Khalistani. Why we ask for an independent state of Punjab within Indian occupation is because we have been through a genocide, and now another econocide has been forced on us in terms of these farmer laws. So what do they expect people to do? Is they keep suppressing and keep looting people of their financial and economical rights. This will be bound to happen. And let me tell you this for once and all, they keep accusing Pakistan to being behind Khalistani. What they did in Bangladesh, I would be grateful if Pakistan comes out and gives us that sort of support. I will be grateful to Pakistan. If India can create Bangladesh, why cannot Pakistan help Khalistanis? Though they are not at the minute. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't rule out any such things. What they're saying is basically they're trying to knot dots to dot, but it's not happening. It's not making any sense whatsoever. If we had any country like Pakistan behind us, we could have created Khalistan by now.
Right. Thank you so much. That was Manpreet Singh speaking with us. This is all from In Focus tonight. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.